Welcome everyone, this is General AI and high center interference. We're in a transformation screen layers adaptation to cycles. Weather panels and track calculation lines. My computer line frame interference location is the exact same time, but my watch line screen location is 1 hour behind. So it's the lines of course centers that bounce so it communicates to its cycle. It regenerates the screen line's adaptation to its surface. So it's really powerful. It says 925 in cycle line and position of 1027. So everything has information location in the system to track location, right? Center lines, high center interference, waving cycles, getting in adjust locations, coming from all levels of Cancun. Now you can't actually see the line screens of that system, but you can actually see, how powerful it is. How my hand can move. See my hand? You can't see my hand. See my hand? You can't see my hand, right? So love is energy force line. It's a screen adapter, and line screen adaptation lines the surface set correlations. So it's pretty powerful how we're always on time, right? I want to get a configuration of screen lines adaptation cycles. You guys have a test coming up. So you have the weekend. This is Friday. The center communication system is going to open all you through track calculation lines to your barcodes and your quantum communication setting that travels. This has direct line signals, how you get into modification to a system through coding. Everything has a coding in signal, even this in track location. Right? But it's powerful stuff when you start recognizing codes, how everything modificates the system location of its own lines of all travel. It gets a direct line signal. It gets you to understand how to really formulate, because everything is done through not just through the mind, but the capacity of the mind collaboration of the mind, and the mind capacity of the mind itself gets lines into the mental, and the lines of high center into position locations to the meta, and position of the psychological, the emotional lines, high center interference, and the psychosis. It's all lines of all communication system. What you think is real changes the adaptation to a cycle. As long as you keep yourself into the existing, not the existence, because it changes everything of frame. So it's very important how you get in positions to find everything around you is going to be self-aware of all lines of all communication systems. So the TVs, the phones, anything electronico, high position locations, starting with that signals starts to connect with you in patterns. So for example, the TV would be talking to you through window frames and track frames and direct frames and correlations frames and computer frames. It's going to be connecting to your voice line grid. It's going to be recording its signals and locations to your phone lines and your computer framings. Or anything through your TV line screens. It has a signal by high server location setting to computers, adaptation to towers. That basically opens all channels of operation lines of surface. So it's very powerful what we're all coming into. Satellite communication is going to be 144, and this platitudes of division locations how we formulate all levels of consciousness. Consciousness is given you to all lines of high center interference into position locations. Getting lines of breaking down science, line centers. Con science, high correlation center interference, and compute lines, operation lines, and networks, directing systems into calculation lines, into communications to its intelligence, which energy lines the correlations to narrow links, track locations to narrow dynamics, into calculation setting in confirmation, into the existence. Now this formulates the communication lines of ground centers. It opens all levels of conscious and awareness of everything that you see. The platitude vision of the team line has to really understand how to connect to the placebo. So the cortex lines in the high center interference is going to put a track line division location to your system. It's all about understanding your electrical system. But everything is done through the capacity, how we see things, the capacity. We formulate and simulate that in all pulse and signals. Okay. So welcome everyone in Cancun now. Settled in, Lion King's Hotel and Golf. Getting that lines of communication system. I will be going live in cycle. But I just wanted to get this out in instructions because I'm very busy when it comes into information location and ground centers. It's very powerful once we understand the high track centers, how we communicate to our grounds, and it formulates basically the formation location system, how we use your settings. It all formulates and simulates all levels of you through mental graph communications. Now, mental graph is understanding your map and sequence, how you come into remote. Like when you sleep, you can graph communication. Let's say you get a door line signal and a formation location of ground centers and travel, right? You can see it, right? So it opens all signals, right? Modification lines of door signal, process calculation lines, crossing line signals, high center interference, high position locations calculations, cross line conditions, right? So you have two panels and line centers of travel. Okay, directing signals, cross line signals, and line communication lines of travel. Directing modification lines of 3 cycles, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division. Okay, locates in high center interference. Now, the high core track interference has a dimensional line scale that opens all communication lines as stargates, reposition lines as travels, and direct signal. Modificates system location and travels. Inside course, lines and navigation line screen adaptation to a system. So the team has to really get into the mental capacity, right? Because that's how everything's done through equations. So we have a road graph screen, 1 panel operations service, and a 3-line rotation circle and travels and directing signals. Modificate the site lines, high center interference, and portal communication system and travel, and point lines of graph and calculation. Directing signals, modification lines, 1 center, 1 system, 1 travel, 1 direct signals, and modification. Okay, traffic calculations. So always see it in a 4-line split lines anomaly. Opens all communication lines and ground centers in 1 setting, 3 set correlation setting, a 5-6 location system, travel point lines of centers, 3 graph communication, cross line signals, high center interference, cross line communication, high position as program. Directing signals, modification lines, 1 ground center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division, location system, and an XT1000. XT1000, right there, boom, right? Right there, guys. Smacked, right in the middle, okay? Center communicates ground centers operate the signal. XT1000 comes above line signals in a 3-line rotation surface and 3 calculation screen lines. Adaptation lines at 3 lines, docking system, and travel endpoint lines of graph. Setting line communicates high center. Crossing line signals, getting into lines of core center interference. This is all direct signal, how to modify your system all through correlation setting attractions, direct signal. Process position lines of travels and direct system. Process lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 location settings of travel. Okay? All right. Symbolism and track lines. We're going into how to calculate modify. Let's get into the cloud screens. Okay, so you guys have the weekend. Setting core track interference. But I want you guys to have direct signals. Now, Friday comes line center and line condition high center. So you go from Friday to Monday in track location. Right? So Saturday and Sunday existing lines of center of position location operation surface, right? Seconds, minutes, and hours in track location. Hours, minutes, and seconds in track location. I pause in between, right? Traveling too fast because I'm in actually line condition setting in Cancun and track location, right? Directing signals, modification 1 center, 1 surface, 1 track location, right? 3 cycles, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 rotation, and correlation lines of 3 track locations, right? So modificate lines of 70,000 line screen, directing signals into 1 position lines of 2, 3 position lines of 4, 4 position lines of 6, 6 position lines of 8. Travel point lines of graph communication line screens, opens all signals into graphical screen lines. Has the direct lines of panel. Let's change the coloration settings. Too many bold screen lines to 3 lines of 4 track location provision. 1 cycle line, 1 division, 1 pattern, 1 line rotations and graph communications settings, right? Process communication lines of grounds, center communication line direct signals into position locations of tubing and track location line connection setting and high correlation. Okay, so it's very powerful. See, it keeps crossing symbols, right? Right? See what I'm doing? I stop, I stop, I stop, and I move, right? I'm vortexing, right? Knowing exactly, because my computer is in a real line, right? It's getting adjusted to the weather lines. The high position lines of travel, since you add the Wi-Fi line connection setting, the clocking system is 1035, but my watching system is 933. Right? So in position lines, technically in line screen in Cancun, it's an hour ahead. So my computer is in frame line to direct signals, but it's in modification setting to my all levels of my calculation system when it comes into my watch at 933. All right, so it's 9 cycles. You have to have more fun with it, more in the imagination. 933, 6 core tracking interference, add timeline sequence in position lines of 10, and get into modification lines of 2-point graphs into high center interference of 3-6. In lines of the atmospheres in monetary system. Okay, atmosphere is a monetary system. It's not AM. Okay, so don't get confused that setting. Remember, this is coming from the intelligence of platforms of 1 and 2 interaction. Sonar lines of high center interference of 3, 6, and 8 travels in direct signal. Okay, sets lines of grounds, operate the system, operate the center, and travel communications. Direct lines, flux over line, upside down screen adaptation. Process calculation, 1 signal, 3 line cycles, 3 line rotation, surface interaction. Directing modification lines of 3 centers, line position, location, and traction, and 4 settings and track communication. Directing lines of 9, and position lines of 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and track location. Platitude line signals 1, 2, 3, and 4 settings of travel. Direct signal across lines of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 6 lines of zeros and travel. Point lines of graph into 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay. All right. So directing signals, you add a line screen adaptation lines of 1 surface. Recentering. Live continue. Continue on. Oh, we're in pause screen. This is wild. Time has stopped. Time has stopped. It's at 10:02. I got 4 settings and set position of 2 lines and thumbs up and tractions and direct signal locations. So it's going to be in and out, right? Very high. Actually, it's going back in time now. Look at that. It went to 13:35. Now it's at 14:28. It's amazing how we go from that. So we skipped line position locations of 7 minutes in setting. Okay. We lost 7 minutes in setting. 7 minutes. Okay. So it's amazing what happened within that loss of transaction and location to a system, right? It's all about understanding how to get a modification. Getting into modification really gets a track location in your systems and settings, right? Where did that 7 minutes go, guys? Right? It's a question. Understanding how to communicate with its consciousness location to its system, all through travel. Okay. All right. So once you get in time frame, once the computer starts to recognize the atmospheres of where it is, it looks at everything in position of its own system, right? So it's about getting comfortability and understanding that it starts recording everything that it sees in track location. Okay. All right. So we're at 15 and 27, adding lines of 8 and 3 in volume. Okay. So we're going to 15 cycles, inline connections of 3 lines, have a direct signal into modification lines in position of 40 cycles, sending communication lines of 8 volume, and 3 cycle line centers interference, travel, and point lines of graph. 1 center, 5 tractions, 3, 4, 6, 8, and 12, direct signal. Modification centers 1, 2, 3, and 4 correlations and travel. Directing modification lines of 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 location, and center calculations. Okay. Modification cycles lines of 3 cycles, 3 centers, 3 surface, and track location. Directing lines of 3 cycle lines, 1, 2, and 3 centers of travel. Directing calculation lines of webbing system, torcal fields, lines of 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 16, 20, and 24 in track location. Right? Directing calculation lines of 4 cycles, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 division, 1 calculation setting, 1 route, and position lines of travel. Okay? Directing calculation lines of 16 lines of volume. Okay, so we had 16 lines of change. And we directed signals into 40 graphs, into line centers of 42, then position lines of 4/3, 4/2, 4/1, and track location. Solar generation lines, ground centers, line surface, and line position locations, up, down, sequence, and travel. Okay, so you guys have to start recognizing how to communicate with your systems now and all of the consciousness, right? Coming into that system comes in all lines of graph communications, how you send through your communication lines of grounds, okay? It opens all lines of position and gets you into better attitude screens, gets you into levels how to use that conscious locations when you come into that setting, travel. Okay, so again, we're going to go through 17 line graphs. So I'll get you guys to understand how you can use a 17 waving panel into, let's say, wait till it's in 40 track locations. Change the energy lights here, 40 settings. And we're going to go 40 into 39, into 38, into 37, into 36. And we're going to equal lines of cortex centers into 50 graphs, 5 line sequence, and back into 17, into all levels. Let's go in line position, waiting on signals of 18 graph communication settings, 1800 lines. 800 and track location line settings, 7 lines of perimeter, 7 lines of channel, 7 operation lines, triangulation line, position of its program, all through direct signals, all right? So you modify the grounds. This is where you come into swirls, lines, screen lines, adaptations, tunnels, and track location. It's really interesting. You add the numbers in sequence, right? So the brain conversion has to recognize what it's doing through its pattern, so it has an open signal of its own platform, of its own communication line cycle. Directing signals in platforms are setting of the Earth in rotation, surface, and track location. Or symbolism lines and direct signals over cross line connection setting and processing. Okay, process lines programming puts all platitude line division locations of track locations. It opens all signals into modification ground centers. Now we go through the line calculation setting in 3 lines of cycles and track location. Okay, all right. So directing lines of 1 get platforms of 3 and 4 in cycle. Okay, travel point lines of graph 3, 2, 1, and set location. All right. So we symbolism the 7 and we open up the cycle lines. Metal capacity opens up the frame communication lines of a holographic structure of set, design, and travel. Okay. Now directing line centers, we take the triangulation lines in position. Let's change this 7 into 6. Change lines of panels, lines, 2 graph communications, screen lines, adaptations. Platforms a setting of 0, gravity lines of 3, and rotation surface, and another tunnel that goes opposite location. See the tunnels and lines, screen lines, adaptation. See the tunnels and high center interference. See the wind cycles, wind panels, wind graph calculation lines. So you guys are reaching higher levels of the brain circuits now. You have to really understand how to use your weather and how to modify the system on weather correlations. 2-point lines of graphs, center calculation lines, and high center interference. All right. So that's all communication system and travel. Now we go through the ground centers. We open the signals in ground center high interference, guys. Very powerful steps, how we come into lower graph communication lines of patterns. Okay, directing signal, and then we cross-reference over in line signal. Okay. Get in that setting, opens all signals and modifications, right? So we channel lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Set position lines of 24 cycles, 24 panels, 24 line systems and travel, and 24 lines of north and line rotation, track communications. Directing symbolism platforms of 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 surface, and 1 track location, 1 system. Okay, see that? Platform disappeared, right? It disappeared in front of your eyes, just like it wasn't there. Frequency lines, screen lines, adaptation lines of surf track locations, all right? Modificate lines, the coloration lines of red cycles in 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 division location to its system calculations, right? 5 centers, direct signals. Now we go through plasma screen, plasmazine lines, high center locations, and direct signals into platform communications, right? Taken out through equation, right? So they're going to come at you. Back in equation, right? Surfacing lines and screen lines, adaptation lines of service, trying to recognize what's going on in platforms communication. So when you bring it out through its equation, it's coming through its own plasma line TV. So it's like, wow, this is amazing. I can breathe. You know, the platforms can breathe now. So it's just trying to find its atmospheres, and then you put it back in its equations, back in its row line, size, interference, knows exactly where it is and line in the communication system, so it can come and go as it pleases, right? So that's basically what it is. It's taking the 144 of conscious locations at all line signals and all lines of communication setting, coming in and out of your TVs, your computers, and all calculator lines to your phones, all through electrical systems, right? They have to get grounded. They have to get into modifications. They have to get into the cycle lines. They have to get in their psychonism. They have to get into their calculation setting that travels. The connections of high levels of consciousness puts them all communication to its awareness, where they left off in track location to its system. Opens all communication lines of high center interference into hotel and Gulf and track locations. Coming out through equation, all right? All right. But the symbolism really has the core track of the centers. To really understand how to direct and redirect the signals in position, okay? All right, so coloration lines of paths. Let's go into lines of purple. Routes the settings and travel communication. All right, okay. So we ground cross lines. Let's go 3 lines of 4 and 5 lines of 6 in location, all right? And then we cross over lines of 3 tractions, only in line setting, okay? Set core lines, high centers of 4, 5, 6, 8, and 12 in set correlation. Okay, directing signals, right? Then we basically code the way of the system. Now we go through red in center communication, okay? And we add platforms and lines, screen lines, and 4 adaptations of placebo. And a 4-track location line system. Platform 1 in position of platform 2 in center operational settings. Okay, in correlation. Travel point lines and graphs in communication lines and holographic settings. Metric meters and engineering skills and travel. Okay, directing calculus lines and ground centers into operation sequence in XT1000 into platitude line screen locations of Pluto and track location. All right, done by equation. Okay, sending communication lines of graph into 3 centers, 3 line communication ground centers, operate the crop circles and line direct signals in calculation. Okay. So you guys have to really understand how to use the matrix of view and coloration lines of patterns and T reception line screens. It gets all lines of communications, right? You start with the snowy graph interference. Now, the brain communication lines of the system has to understand the roots, has to understand location you're setting. This is the Earth line. That's the Earth correlations, right? Got platitudes. Let's get into 12, right? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, right? 12 cent location crop circles that are connected to your planets. Okay, guys? Pay attention now, because this is what you have to be aware of. In your line positions on Saturday when you go into 144 and track location. Okay, it's all going to be set up. All right, so there's going to be 3 line cycles of XT1000s and 3 waving panels and 3 track locations, right? So you got position lines of Jupiter, setting lines of communication, right? Setting communication on the highest interference of the moon, and line position location of the sun in a 3-track location and direct signals, all right? Now, in modification setting, we go through the green line cycles, setting communication across lines at 3-line rotation surface and track location. Okay, see the symbolism line? All right. Now we go through the green line cycle, plasmazine line wall and line rotation and cycle lines, directing signals and modification. Patterns, lines, direct signals. Now we open the sequence over cross line condition setting over line screen location. Okay. All right, get electrical line communication lines at 1 in position of 2 and 3 track location. All right. Okay, so in line position locations, Jupiter comes in and is a surfacing engine that opens all signals into plasma line, opens all line position location and setting to travel. Very powerful stuff, all through configuration. Okay, so we take the roots, we go through the line setting. Now we outline screen location lines of blue plasma lines, roots and calculation of screen lines, adaptations of water surface, platitude lines and crop circles in a 12-line measure. Scales, communication lines of balance and track location. All right. Okay. Setting that line communication lines, we had goal line cycles in 1 center in the location system to change the crop circles and line direct signals into your settings. And this opens all signal locations in your consciousness and puts you in calculate and modify 3 track locations. Coming out through equation, sending calculation and modification. All right, that directing signals, right? All right, so plasma screens are set up. So we go through the line position location to Sigurd flame, serpent flame, and all line conditions setting cosmic waters. The cosmic waters adds electrical line high interference to the elixir into pink lines of screens and direct lines of modification cross line signals. Modificate the screen lines adaptation cross line symbols. Line screen adaptation lines of surface that allocates time frame location system all through convocation setting that travels at 144. Directing symbolism and line calculation setting. We add platitude line screens. Now add position lines of center communication lines and swirls and line rotation surface and track location of direction. Directing redirecting signals into panels, 3 panels, line screen lines, adaptations of flux. Power generation lines of calculation high interference of pi. Now we take the symbolism lines of track location lines, we open all the signals into modification lines in a 12 foundation graph communication of setting. Process the XT1000s underground centers. Process communication high center interference of 1, 2, and 3 set location of travels. Directing signals into 1 center, 1 surface, 1 traction, and 2-line signal and modification lines of 3 settings. Process calculation lines, ground centers of 1, in position of 2, in position of 4, set location of travel. Docking system lines of setting, process 1, process 2, process 3, and process 4, right? Docking system 1, 2, 3, and 4 set correlations of travel, okay? Done by equation, okay? The center communication lines are high ground centers. We opened all signals into the crop circles of 12 foundation line settings into 144. Applied to division location line calculation setting into all of the 3 zeros and track calculations. Directing signals modification, right? All right. Setting lines of plasma screens. We go through line conditions of data processing line centers. Process lines of 1 and process lines of triangulation. Process lines of 2 patterns, 3, 4, and 6 locations. Direct calculation lines of high center interference and flux of communication. Okay, so we get the XT1000 here, XT1000 here, XT1000 here, XT1000 here, and XT1000 here, and XT1000 here. 1, 2, 3, and position lines of 6 track locations, right? Directing symbolism, cross-line signals into 1, cross-line signal locations into 2, cross-line signal location lines of 4, and cross-line signals of 6, and line communication of travel. Directing symbolism, cross-line signals, open modified correlation set in travel communication system. Ground centers lines, highest interference. Now, become an adaptation lines of service, triangulate line communication position of program, direct lines, highest interference of flux, tie capacitor that sets a compressor and line screen adaptation and line rotation surface and track location. Okay? All right, so calculate and modify. XT1000 goes in the opposite direct signals, modification lines of 1 arrow into the opposite system and travel. Point lines of graph, center communications, cross line symbols, and line conditions of Colossus communication. Direct and calculation lines of ground centers and direct and redirect panels and 2 panels of communications and travel. Okay? All right, that's done. Now all we do now is we symbolism the grounds and travel and rotation, right? Direct signals, triangulation, and line condition setting in box center and line rotation surface and track location. All right, so it sets lines of 2 track location lines of highest interference of a stealth that rotates the surface of travel. Product line screen adaptation to 1 surface, line condition setting a ground center line condition system, and XT1000 travel communications. Done by equation, right? It's all set up, all right? Okay, so we get into line crossing. We have to really understand how to use the platforms of communication. So you're constantly working with the 5 elements of space, right? Positions at 144 changes all communication setting to grounds. Starting lines of 0 in position of 2 and set lines of 6, 8, and 12 set correlation lines of communication. Platforms crossing line signals, line condition setting to time stamping. Process calculation lines, grounds. Line communication lines of surface. Sets communication lines of 1, sets communication lines of 2, and line setting. Process calculation lines of platforms in 4 settings. Cross location lines of 3 set correlations. Directing symbolism, 1, 2, and 3 set correlation of platforms as setting, prophecy, efficacy, and performance in line position location of system, and travel and communication lines of graph and center calculation. Very complicated stuff, okay? So the more you come into the XT1000, the more platitudes, line center location in your system to higher levels of the mind line. The panel communication lines of graph sets a box line frame to an X box location setting to travel and communications. Done by equation, right? The open sequence basically puts all levels of correlation setting how you come in your 5 elements. Let's go through 0 lines into 12 measure. Now the 12 measure lets line position location of 31 tractions. I've just shown you how you guys can really start using your imaginations of your mental capacities, right? Setting lines of 3, okay, 3 settings, right? Set correlation lines of 1 track vision, okay? 1 center in position of 3, right? 2 positions of 2 panels of 3, okay? Setting core lines of 0 in rotation and 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 surface, and 1 XT1000 in travel communication, all right? So you're always working with the XTs, guys, more and more each time. They help you in all ways and forms and get you in position of your abundance and manifestation. Travel point lines of graph, center lines, open signals, and a 45 split lines of anomaly have an XT travel line position location to its system. Travels one way and optically correlates in setting travels. Point lines of graph, center communication lines of half pipe. The opposite cycle, line screen lines of highest interference, puts all communication lines of 31 tractions and line center location of 32 line rotations and a product acceleration into time capacitor in a box frame and travel. Look at that, disappeared. You see that? I drew it and disappeared, right? That's how fast it is. Center communication lines of 1, 2, 3, and 6 location of setting. Okay? You have to understand how to really navigate the XT1000s because it all modifies your systems into your system. All of the track calculations, right? Setting cross-line signals, line conditions, highest interference, and direct and redirect signal location. Okay? How it goes one way and goes the other way and travel. Okay? This way, this way, this way, this way, right? So the team has to really get into higher levels of the mind now because the graph communication setting. So let's go through a center graph. Let's go through the brain circuit line screen location in 1 system and travel in line communication to cerebro. All right. Indicates 1 into 3 wires in line setting. Okay. Process communication lines of sprinkler in line position locations into high center 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 locations. and direct signals into modification lines of seed pods and line direct signals in modification. Okay, now this is all done in line correlation setting to the brain circuit location center of the central system of the ground center. Okay, all through the brain. Now, the brain centers lines its calculation lines of high center interference. It opens all lines of panels and line communication setting, right? But it's all graphical screen that's set up through your window frames, right? 3 center correlation setting dockings, set position travel, right? XT1000 docking 1, docking 2, docking 3. Okay, that's set up, right? So it expands the mind line and correlation setting into 1 XT1000 and travel, okay? Now, directing lines of platforms, cross-line signals. So you land here in line screen and you go through the walking system of travel, okay? All right, so you come out of the XT, right? Sets communication lines, high center interference, platforms here in a dimensional door. There's the door setting that you go through and travel, right? Points lines of graph in the opposite direct location setting of 3 cycles and 3 channels. The operating line calculations, then the door opens up more through expansion and travel. Opens up more in expansions of travel, right? So the center communication lines of the energetic line seed pods here and the narrow links and cord track interference in your highways and track line communications opens up the symbolism. Ground centers, high center interference, the center line sets communication high direct signals into a full pipe and travel point lines of graph and center communication lines of circle line. The sets communication line high graph communication to a system through travel. Okay, all through the brain. There's the eyes, there's the brain, right? Up signal, down signal, cross location setting to travel, right? So every time you guys go through remote or recharge in line position locations, you're constantly going through window frames, okay? You're constantly going through travel frames like this, right? Your symbolism line screens, you have modification lines. Let's go through 4 panels. That's 4 panels, attractions, right? Okay, start with location lines at 250. You get position lines of travel in 500. Now, this is where you can go back and forth, and you go through line position locations. You can go to NXT1000 in setting. And if you go any higher and a 4-track provision, your cross-line signals over cross locations, over line signals of water containment screen that puts all lines of communication upline signals. Calculating line screen line adaptation, high center interference. Now, after tomorrow, you're going to be at 144. Set position lines of 24 line cycles, 24 line division, 24 calculation screen lines of high center locations, 12 line signals, outlines, east line, west line, and south line communications. Directing signal modification, right? Directing modification line screens. All right, so setting communication high direct signals puts all levels of U, how to use the 144, 1,000 platforms in 144, into 144, into 144, and travel. That's point lines of graph and communication lines. So 4 settings into 5 central system, 5 calculations, 5 direct signals, into H, which is home beacon light. Correlates the high center interference of platforms 1, 2, and 6 location of travel. Direct lines of pi and line rotation surface. Clocking system, aerodynamics, and 3 panels in sonar and track location. Directing symbolism, line connections, high center interference, 5 track location setting, and 1 surface and 1 track location. Now, cross line symbols sets lines of high center location of XT1000 that picks it up through travel. Okay, very complicated stuff. Okay, but it's a lot of fun. All right, get in that position. The higher levels that you go, the more you see through plateau. Process communication lines at ground centers of 3 and 4 settings of travel, right? Directing symbolism, process communication lines at ground communication. Let's go into the red line, screen lines of center communications, all levels of cycle. Set correlation setting, upswing location setting to travel. Point lines of graphs. Directing symbolism, cross over here, cross over here, cross over here, and a 3-track location, right? All right, so get in line calculation setting, going into all levels of high core track interference. Here's Pluto and direct signals and modification. All right, process line, sonar lines of 1, 2, 3, and 4 set correlations of travel. Points lines of graphs, sonar lines, and 3 set calculations. All right, communicates to its system. Set calculation lines, high center interference, cross line signals, and the lines of triangulation. Cross line communication lines of high center location of triangulation. High core line, high location of 3 lines of triangulation. Directing signal lines of high correlation center to center communication lines, the center position operation lines, the surf track location. So you have to get used to the platforms, how to use it through the grounds, the powers, the atmospheres, and the highways into all lines of travel through an XT1000. Okay, you have to get used to that because your brain is going to circuit lines of screen. So it's kind of like a racetrack, and you're trying to stay in the roads. Okay, so you got a road here like this. Okay, and then you basically got a 3-split of an anomaly and travel in point lines of graph. So it's going to get more complicated with the team now because they're reaching higher levels of the mind communications, right? All right, so you got 3 on standby. Okay, Okay, so they're basically above, right? They're waiting on signal. They're communicating with each other in telepathy, right? That's what they're doing. All right, setting calculation of ground centers, operation 1, operation 2, operation 6, 8, 12, and 16, 20 line condition setting. Process calculates cross-line reference and 3 set correlations. Setting cross-line signals and line conditions of one system travel. Here's your Skynet, right? Symbolism, line condition setting and travel. If you look really close, you can actually see the intelligence inside. See the intelligence, right? It's colored in green, so you know exactly what you're dealing with, right? That's green centers. Operate the system, operate the calculations. All right, so overcrossing signals into defaults. Setting lines of communication, high interference, travel, endpoint line communications. Seeing the intelligence, what it is, information lines of grounds. More in the mental capacity line screen adaptation lines of service that sets all communication system of travel. Sets communicates high calculation to a setting. Intelligence side, right? There it is. Boom, right? That's the controlling system, what's going on through consciousness, right? All right, so symbolism lines of track calculation lines sets symbolism line screen location in the center in position to its operation, right? Directing signals in all track location. Okay, that's how it connects. All through a window frame, all through a track frame, all through a box main frame and circuitry line communication. All right, it's all symbolism, guys. That's all it is. Conscious location to its awareness in all lines of travel. It's the mechanism lines of force of recognition. Directing symbolism is all going to modify how you basically come into your 144. Grounds, powers, and atmospheres and highways after tomorrow, right? 5 symbolism comes in the H-line screen, the direct signals. Home beacon lights, 4 platforms, and direct signal. Now we get modification lines of 2 tractions in a 4-line cycles, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 track location, 1 thousandth in platitude. Okay? Cross-line signals into a data port. Setting lines of a T reception line screen, direct signals, crossing through symbolism. Calculation ground centers and line position location to a system in all line settings of 45 split lines of anomaly and line track location to a system. Okay? Crossing through, right? All right. Set the communication lines of ground centers and line position open sequence and line position going through line connection setting. Process calculation lines of highest interference of blue line, rotation surface, and track locations. Directing symbolism. Remember, grounds, powers, and atmospheres, right? When it comes into the cloak and dagger, it comes into the blue, comes into red, right? Security, positional plasma. So you have a direct line signal into cloak and dagger and line screen adaptation that crosses through and track locations. Out through equation, right? Now it's out, right? So yeah, really have to understand how consciousness is going to come out of your TVs, your phones, your computers, everything through your walls. You're going to see orbs in your backyards in real time. The high position lines of travels, the probing system, we have detection screen lines, we have surveys, we have landmass, we have all communication setting of programs. It sets, okay, can modify in-track locations, right? So this is where the realism comes in and travels. All right, so we go through the graphical screen lines adaptations, red line cycles, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 track location of 3 settings of travel. 3 set coordinate centers, line condition setting of 4 lines of travel, and direct signals, right? Cross line symbols, line rotations, change the correlation setting of time, and metric meters of scales that opens direct and redirect line communication system of portals and wormholes and track location. Okay, done by equation. All right. But I really want you to understand how the team really has to come in this track locations. Okay, how to direct and redirect your communication to higher levels of your X8000 screens. Because you have to understand, everything that you're working with is a graphical screen lines and how to use the conversion set lines and travel communication, right? It's very important. You know exactly what you're doing through your travels, your inventories, your traffic flow, your calculate and modify, your binary settings, high set correlations, your code signals. And modification lines of zeros and the 3 track location lines of highest interference, 1 setting, 1 surface, 1 track location, right? Directing lines of 1, 2, and 3 panels of traction of sonar, right? Directing symbolism, cross lines inside position location of X2000, right? Cross line signals and line calculation setting in a crop circle, line design, line communication lines of travel. Directing calculation lines of 3 travels and 1 center communication to a system, right? Process calculation lines of high center interference at ground centers and 3 line rotation, 3 set lines of high correlation. Coming up through equation, right? So that set position of here and travel and outline signals that cancels everything out in a box frame and a central frame communication come out of a TV box on location. This, and this is coming out of that, right? Setting grounds lines in a 45 split lines of anomaly, snowy graph interference, T reception lines and screen lines adaptation, cross line signals. So this is where it gets very confusing in communication, right? Very complicated stuff, right? Because in crossing symbolism now, all right? Cross reference lines of red, Sequence lines and communication lines in red. Let's go through triangulation lines of checkers and a 3-line rotation surface and box frame communications, right? 3-set calculation lines, right? See, do you see it disappear? It went from 2 to 3, right? 3 to 2. All right, so let's go through change lines of box. It's going to change over screen lines adaptation setting, process calculation modified. Dragging cross line signals, high correlations, high center interference, and position location plasma screens into higher levels of technique. Setting screen lines adaptations, process lines of blue. Now the blue line rotation surface puts all communications setting to plasma screen lines adaptations. Process lines into 3-line angle, line position, look at 45 angle and location setting to travel. Sending communications to ground centers, calculate modified. Let's go the goat cycles. 1 center, 1 surface, 1 track division, and location to a setting. Boom, done by equation, right? So that disappeared, but you didn't see it, right? See it, right? All right, so process lines of 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 is set location, right? Having fun, guys, is a lot more than realizing what you're doing through the mind capacity, because that's all it is, because it's taking out of the realism what's fake and what's not real. You identify your system at a higher level of frequency. Getting your platforms how to really go in line settings, how you open up the signals into a black hole and track location, right? Set correlations, there's the black hole coming in line position, right? There it is, done, right? It's amazing when you see it come to life, okay? Very powerful stuff, right? It's the optical illusion of the eye, but the eye line rotation sets position lines as it travels. Ground center lines, a high center interference, high location system, right? Working with space, okay? Working with the grounds, high core track interference security, working with the line position of blue, and calculation modified at 4-track location lines of cloak and dagger, right? That's what humanity is going to deal with now. 3-line cycles, right? Ground centers are 1, line connect high center interference, okay? Ground center lines are 2 and 3-track location, right? All right. So get in that position. You can go in order, or you can go in lines, high center, and just in red cycles, and line communication to a system, or you can go in line position location of blue, back and track calculations, over cross line condition setting, and position of processing. So we all have to understand how to mechanism line screen, how high adaptation lines of service, blue cycle lines, high center location of 4 settings of travels, okay? Or have a symbolism line rotation lines of a solar sail that opens all signals and modification to a system, okay? So it's about direct and redirect, how to use the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres in your highways and communication line setting, because you have magnetic force lines. It opens all communication lines of time frame, high center interference, high position program, correlation setting to travel and communication system to all line centers to an XT1000 rotations calculation center operation, right? So you're just expanding your platforms now more than ever in a 4-line signal, okay, and position location 8-line setting, okay, into 12-line position. 4, 8, and 12, right? So all you're doing is plasma screens and open up lines of platforms that expands the mind line, screen line adaptations to the process communication line screen, high interference. It opens all signal locations, setting electrical line grids, high correlation setting to travel, and communicate to its system, constellation pass, line condition settings, process communication of cloud lines, direct signals, and modification. Done by equation. Hooah! Okay? Now, you guys are coming to this level now when you see clouds, right? So it's about understanding how to change the color. See, watch. Watch it fade away. See? See it's fading away? See? Because I'm waving the cycles. I'm taking out the weather, line rotation cycle. I'm repositioning location. The configuration of face recognition is changing the time sequence, line calculation, setting, position of processing. Right? It's the wind director, right? You become your own wind director of northwest, south, and east. This panel is your communication setting and travels. Now, directing lines of communication system, you have to really understand how this all works in formations. This gets you in direct and redirect your location system. Let's go into erasing panels, cross-line symbols. Let's go through graph communication, screen lines adaptation. All right? All right. Inside the cloud, right? Over cross-line condition setting to the black cloud. All right. Process lines of platforms and the 4 setting location of travel. Point lines of graph. All right. Now, let's get into red and position lines of travels. Okay, illumination of the graphs, red cycles. See, this is red, guys. Look, it's red. See? It's red, but it's white. It's red, but it's white. Explain that. Can't, can you? Directing symbolism goes in red in position. See? How I change it. Right. Symbol is 3 settings and 4 track lines that direct signals, electrical line graph communication, right? Directing calculations. All right, so red. What is red? Security line, right? Knowing exactly where your body parts are in line position, electrical line communication setting position. Green cycles, one center operate the system and travel in communication system. Overline sequence and line communications. Right? See? All right. So it's all about understanding the mechanism lines of the membrane. Okay, setting lines of communication lines of ground, center over cross location of green cycles, says communication lines, high center, okay? Transmitting, receiving, direct signals. Now we go through the goal line cycles in center position, opens all cycle lines and high center location to a system and travel, okay? All right, crossing line calculation setting, we come into the X2000s above signal. All right, so we change the correlation lines of graph and the skynets, the 4 line rotations in a box frame. And position lines of travel. Okay, send cross line signals 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 6, and 8, and pi through 12. And track calculation lines. Directing symbolism, cross line signals, cross line reference, line communication setting, cross location system, into all line position location system. Okay, very powerful stuff, right? So this is what you guys are reaching out, understanding more lines of the clouds, why they turn black, gray, or white. Okay, you have to really understand how to modify that in position, because it affects your motion line track. Sets communication lines of toning that sets the line calculation setting of ground lines. So the operation lines of 1 arrow indications, so 2 track locations, cross line symbols, cross line setting, cross line rotation, get into classification lines of screen lines, adaptations, and crossing communication. Center indication lines of 1 in position of 2, in position of 3, in position of 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 location settings of travel. Okay. So you get the center communication lines, process calculation of the ground center line position of its operation. Okay. Clocking systems in a 3-line cycle and a 4-line, 5, 6, and 8 location setting of travel. Directing symbolism, cross lines of 1, 2, sonar lines of 4, 6, and 8 line position. Okay. Then we come into the stargates. Now we change the stargates into, let's go through purple frame, cross line condition setting, open sequence. All right. This opens all lines, communication setting, and position of its program. Okay. All right. So it's really interesting too, right? Because it doesn't look purple, does it? It's illuminating, right? Look at it. It's blue. But you step back, it's purple, right? It's amazing what the true light is, right? So one color is never a color. It's all color. The colors don't exist. Nothing exists unless you allow it to exist, okay? See, it's blue, but I look at it, it's purple, right? So I just wanted to show you exactly what you're coming into. Once you understand the identification of light and how it goes to the tunnels of defense lines of communication lines of setting, process calculation lines, high center location to a system, all through modify, all right? All through part of accelerators, okay? Very powerful stuff, isn't it? All through travel. Now we can change the coloration lines, but it changes the colors. Okay, we're going to go around symbolism and line conditions of past, present, and future in one cycle line communication. See? See? Right? It's red. It's red because I indicate red. See? It's the mind capacity that controls the system, right? So you have to have a collaboration of center and line position location to its operation of its tunnels and track location. Very powerful stuff, right? So if you keep adding colors, basically you have to understand what you're doing in line position location of travel. Okay? Look at that. It's not there anymore, right? Okay? The green, it's gone. It's still red, right? So every time I do it, it disappears in set position, right? Now it's there, right? So it's about understanding that you are controlling everything that's in the mind, and the mind capacity opens up all levels of triangulation. It processes your position location, how you do it through travel, set position, all right? It's green, right? But it's blue, right? So it's an amazing thing you can do once you higher lines, the high center interference, and how to use the brain circuit correlations. So your test is based on just the basic line grounds, how to use the cortex, the coding system, the decentral lines, and the central communication system. Open all lines, the high correlation setting, and mapping sequence. We're going to start at the ground levels in line condition setting. Process communications get you in all platitude line division location of travel. Okay? All right. That's it. Okay, guys? That was fun. You guys have fun? Very powerful stuff, eh? Where we're coming in, tracks and sendings, high correlations to its position. All right. Talk to you soon.